Hunter says, my uncle will be here with his brother, in all caps, who would like to say hello to the chairman. He goes on, Jim's brother, if he's coming, wants to say hello. His uncle's brother. I wonder who that could be. I can't quite figure it out. Brother of Hunter's uncle, Jim, is Joe Biden. Why was Hunter so secretive about his father? I'm going to tell you why. It's because Joe Biden didn't want the American people to know he and his family were getting paid millions and millions of dollars from a company closely tied to the Chinese Communist Party.
Well, that was Congresswoman Nancy Mace yesterday reading texts that allegedly linked Joe Biden to his son's business deals. Joining me now to react is Gregg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst and author of the great book, which I have in my hand, as a matter of fact, Trial of the Century, about the Scopes trial. Greg, great to see you. Thank you for being here. I thought she did a great job yesterday. And of course, a lot of Americans, if they just happen to be watching Fox and they hadn't been watching us before, they heard stuff that they never heard before. I mean, it looks a hell of a lot like evidence, the stuff that she was pointing to, despite what Jamie Raskin and others call the lack of evidence.
Oh, it is evidence. You know, evidence is testimonial or documentary. It's direct and circumstantial. And here, Nancy Mace and others were pointing to the wire transfers, the suspicious activity reports from banks, David, that show $24 million funneled through 20 shell companies controlled by Hunter Biden. Some of that cash given to Biden family members, and a large part of it came from China immediately after Hunter flew with his dad to Beijing, where both of them met with the son's new partners. There are emails and text messages where, Hunter is demanding payments by referencing his father sitting next to him, and they're issuing threats. And of course, days later, $5 million was wired to Hunter's company. And of course, the infamous deal in writing where the big guy is slated to get 10%. Two of Hunter's ex-partners have confirmed Joe Biden was the big guy. So this is arguably not just relevant evidence, it's incriminating evidence that Joe Biden was complicit in his son's corrupt influence peddling schemes.
And there's literally so much evidence now making that link that I hadn't seen that particular text that Nancy Mace was talking about before, where he said, my uncle's brother, and then the brother was, every letter of that word was capitalized if the person, his business partner, lost the hint of what he was talking about. I mean, in a court of law, that would have significance as evidence, would it not?
Oh, absolutely. It's incriminating of the other people who are referenced in the email other than Hunter Biden. And so, David, I think the question the committee wants answered is this: did Joe Biden abuse the power of his office as vice president to enrich his family? Right. Even if he received no money himself, it is still bribery under the law, which is also an impeachable offense. It's also a crime for a public official to sell access and promises of influence, indeed the illusion of influence, in exchange for money himself or his family. Concealing it would be obstruction and conspiracy. And of course, using shell companies to disguise the source of the money is money laundering. So this warrants, David, an investigation, which is exactly what the House is doing, whether or not it leads to impeachment eventually.
Then you have this, and this is more political than legal, but you have the spectacle of Jamie Raskin, the lead Democrat on the opposite side of the aisle, who started out yesterday in his speechifying, accusing Republicans of using bad language, bad references to the president, which was supposedly against protocol. Almost in the same breath, he then accused Republicans, House Republicans, who were his partners on that committee, of being monkeys. Literally, he used the word monkeys of former President Trump. I mean, it's just, and not to mention the fact that this is the same guy who was supporting an impeachment trial against President Trump based on evidence that turned out to be completely false.
Yeah, look, Democrats, including Jamie Raskin, were outraged that fact witnesses are not being called. Well, they don't understand how an impeachment inquiry works. It's not uncommon. It's typical to begin by calling law professor and other experts to explain the framework constitutionally of an impeachment inquiry, and Jonathan Turley and two others agreed. There is more than sufficient evidence to open the inquiry. They confirmed serious evidence of potential influence peddling that could constitute bribery, as I say, conspiracy, obstruction, money laundering, FARA violations, abuse of power. That evidence does implicate Joe Biden as facilitating this scheme, aiding and abetting his son's corrupt schemes. And Professor Turley repeated half a dozen times what I've long argued. The money doesn't have to go to Joe himself for it to be a crime.
Yeah. Greg, finally, what is next for oversight? I mean, one thing that Democrats say is, well, we don't have any physical evidence, any hard evidence in terms of bank statements and so forth linking Joe and Hunter together. Is it conceivable that that's the kind of evidence that comes next that's subpoenaed by the committee?
Yeah, I think so. They already last night, hours after the end of the first hearing, they subpoenaed the banking records of James Biden, the president's brother, and Hunter Biden. They're also going to be doing the same thing with respect to Hunter's former partners, whether it be Rob Walker or Eric Schwerin or others. I think we will see some of these suspicious activity reports. It's now up to 170 of them. These are red flags that the banks sent to the criminal division of the Treasury Department.
Right.
That's evidence. It's evidence where all the money went. So it's follow the money, David.
All right. As we've seen so often before. Greg, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here, Greg.